Well, some interesting detail there. First of all, I think we need to have a look at how we put our sold stickers on signs. There's a couple of creases there that didn't look so good. But on a serious note, the interesting thing I thought in amongst all of that is that the correlation between the vendor discounting and time on market makes good sense to me in terms of perhaps a slight readjustment in the market and seeing obviously properties linger for a little bit longer and therefore having to readjust to the market to accommodate a sale. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes over the coming months. But joining me on the show at the moment is Justin Hazel, who is President of the Property Council of South Australia. Justin, good to have you in.
Oh, thank you very much, Tim. Great to be here.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Perhaps given that you have been on a good number of times now, some of the things that would be interesting to get an update on at the moment are how the 30-year plan is going at the moment, and perhaps what the changes to interest rates, especially given we've just rolled that out over the last fortnight, and what perhaps a change of government might see in its effect on the 30-year plan's rollout.
Okay, well, in relation to the 30-year plan, as you're well aware, the 30-year plan calls for 70% infill growth and 30% greenfield growth. So there's a real shift in where the state's going in terms of concentrating densities in inner city locations as opposed to continuing with the urban sprawl. More recently, there's been a planning amendment to the City of Adelaide, which has increased height limits, or in actual fact, it's removed height limitations altogether, with the exception of making sure that it doesn't adversely impact on aircraft traffic movements. And that's recently been released on an interim basis, so it's currently out for public consultation, and that's caused a whole lot of high density residential development activity, planning activity within the city. And in relation to what's going on in the broader marketplace in terms of interest rate reductions, federal government, etc., of course, the most recent interest rate decrease was very, very good news for the real estate market. However, we've still got this lingering uncertainty in relation to global financial markets. We've got Greece, which is all over the place. No one knows where it's heading. And there's a lack of confidence that's coming into our marketplace through that, and also uncertainty in the United States. But the fundamentals of the Australian real estate market, and in particular the South Australian marketplace, are still very, very strong. We've got an undersupply of residential property, a shortage of property, and I think that the increased purchasing power that people are currently putting away because they're all paying down debt instead of buying, I think that that's really positioning us in a really unique place. And once this market turns, I'm convinced that it's going to turn very, very hard. And for that reason alone, people need to get in and set themselves up for future growth.
Sure. Well, look, let's talk about confidence in a minute, because I think that's a really big part of where we're at. The other thing that is interesting, and you touched on, is that change to the development plan in terms of the heights. There were a number of developments that were rejected 6-8 months ago on the back of purely and simply they were proposal was too high. Where are they at? Have they reapplied? Are they on their way? What's happening with those sorts of developments?
Yeah, there are a number of developments which have reapplied under the new planning guidelines. Some of those have actually already received planning consents, so they're ready to go. So, and there is a flurry of activity that I'm aware of that's currently occurring in that marketplace. So I think Adelaide's a real place to watch, because it's going to change, and I think there's just so much going on within the city that is going to make the city such a more livable location. You've got things like the Riverbank precinct unfolding, you've got the Adelaide Oval upgrade, you're talking about upgrades to Rundle Mall, we've got inner city tram links and all of this kind of stuff going on. And I think that they're all really good initiatives that are being undertaken by the state government, because they're all about creating Adelaide as the heart of this state.
Sure, yeah. Is there a particular focal point in the city where people are focusing that development at the moment, or is it?
Oh, look, I think there's a general gravitation towards the northwestern quadrant.
Yes.
But there is activity happening on a much more broader note than that. I'm aware of activity that's proposed for areas like East Terrace. There's a lot of activity proposed for places like Gooja Street.
Right.
So it's a lot broader, but there is a lot of activity in that northwestern quadrant.
Well, that's really good news, and that goes perhaps towards the confidence side of things that I think we both agree is lacking. And I'm really interested, and I totally agree in your thoughts that we are somewhere around the bottom of the market, price-wise, with interest rates, perhaps around about as low as they're likely ever to go, and prices likewise. I can imagine in 3 or 4 years' time, people saying to us, I wish I'd bought back then.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. I'm not convinced that we are at the bottom of the interest rate cycle.
No.
I think there's potentially some more downward moves to occur there, although I'm not an economist. But I wouldn't be surprised if we had another 50 points coming off in the next in the next 12 months. But I think that the fundamentals of the South Australian market, people need to look to WA and the Perth experience as to what could potentially happen here, particularly if or when BHP pushes the button on the Olympic Dam expansion. And I just think that's going to completely change the face of our marketplace. And anyone who's not in it is going to really regret that they weren't in it.
And I guess you mentioned off camera earlier the perhaps the building of wealth where people have been paying off debt and gearing up. Maybe now's the time to start spending again.
Well, I suspect so. I mean, it's impossible to really pick the bottom of the market, but it's around about now. It might be now, it might have been 2 months ago, it could be in 2 months' time. I don't know, no one really knows. But all I know is that in historical terms, the current market appears to represent very good value.
Yeah, well, one thing's absolutely for certain, in a couple of years' time we'll have a fair idea. That's good. Well, stay with us anyway, Justin. We're going to go and have a look at our Going, Going, Gone segment.